The slap came so fast I did not even have time to raise my hand. My glasses flew off and shattered against the shiny floor of the hall in front of 130 silent guests. My cheek burned, but what hurt most was seeing my son staring at the ground. Isabella, my daughter-in-law, had just slapped me on her wedding day because I refused to hand over the keys to my apartment. "That is what you get for being selfish," she screamed at me, her white dress untouched and her face red with anger. "A woman your age does not need to live in such a big place." No one came closer. One of Alejandro's aunts tried to stand, but someone held her arm. The rest turned away as if looking less would make what had just happened less real. I bent down to pick up the pieces of my glasses. My hands were shaking. Alejandro remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Besides, you are no longer welcome here," Isabella continued, adjusting her veil as if nothing had happened. "Alejandro and I need privacy to start our life. Your apartment is perfect for us while we find something better." Every word was loaded with contempt. For months I had endured her comments about my simple clothes, my old car, my part-time job at the flower shop, and my quiet way of living. But that slap crossed a line no one had the right to touch. I stood up slowly. Tears ran down my face, but inside something grew cold. I was no longer going to explain the obvious. I was no longer going to ask for respect from someone who had decided to see me as an obstacle. For years I had lived discreetly. I had secrets no one knew, not even my own son. As I walked toward the exit of the grand hall, my memories of the past months came flooding back. I remembered the first time Isabella came to my apartment 2.5 years earlier. Alejandro arrived with that nervous smile I had known since he was a child. "Mom, I want you to meet someone very special." And there she was, Isabella Ruiz, perfectly styled, expensive clothes, impeccable nails, and a smile that did not reach her eyes. She worked independently doing social makeup and image consulting and always spoke of important clients. She looked at my living room, my old furniture, and my simple kitchen. She said nothing offensive directly, but her expression said everything. "How cozy," she murmured. Alejandro did not notice the contempt. I did. That dinner was uncomfortable. Isabella barely touched the food I had prepared. When I asked about her family, she answered with short phrases. Before leaving, however, she had already asked about my financial situation. "And how do you manage with your pension, Mrs. Vargas? It must be hard living with so little." What Isabella did not know was that I was also observing her. Over the following months I began to notice patterns. Every time she visited my apartment, she made comments about how old everything looked and how dangerous it was to live alone. But her eyes always lingered on what really mattered to her: the location, the balcony view, and the size of the rooms. One day while Alejandro was in the bathroom, I overheard her on the phone in my kitchen. "Yes, Mom. Alejandro's mother's apartment is in an extremely expensive area. If I can convince her to move to something smaller, we could stay here while we buy our own. She is so naive, she will even thank us for helping her." When she returned to the living room, I kept calm. From that day, every encounter with Isabella became a performance. She pretended concern for my well-being. I pretended not to notice. First came the gentle suggestions. "Elena, I saw some beautiful residences for people your age, everything included with doctors nearby, no worries." Then came the direct pressure. "You cannot keep living alone. What if you fall? What if days pass and no one knows?" Every argument was designed to make me feel useless. And the worst was hearing Alejandro repeat the same things. "Mom, Isabella is right. Maybe you should consider something more manageable." The son I had raised with love and sacrifice was beginning to see me as a burden. After they announced their engagement, the visits became more tense. Isabella brought brochures for private residences for seniors and left them on my table as if my departure was already decided. But I also started to move. One afternoon while they were out looking at wedding details, I called my old friend Elsa, who worked in real estate. "Elsa, I need you to investigate something for me. There is a couple too interested in my apartment and I want to know how serious their situation is." What she found left me cold. Alejandro and Isabella were drowning in debt. Their rented apartment had 3 months overdue. The cars they showed off were financed and already behind. Several wedding suppliers had not been fully paid, and the expensive hall, premium banquet, open bar, imported flowers and live band came to nearly 950,000 pesos. The cards of Alejandro I knew for another reason. For a long time, without him asking too many questions, I had been covering holes. Then everything made sense. My apartment was not a home for them. It was a financial escape. 2 weeks before the wedding, Isabella organized an important family meeting. She arrived at my house with Alejandro and her parents. It was an ambush. Elena, we want to talk to you about your future, began Isabella's mother, a haughty woman who looked at me as if I were a pending matter. At your age, living alone in such a large place is not only unnecessary, it is also dangerous, added Isabella's father, examining my living room with evaluator eyes. Alejandro sat beside them, quiet, nodding from time to time. Mom, he finally said in a voice I did not recognize. Isabella, and I think it would be better for everyone if you moved to a place more appropriate for your age. Appropriate for my age, I repeated. And who decides that? You. Isabella's mother exchanged a look with her husband. Elena, you should also think about what is best for Alejandro and Isabella. What is best for them? I asked. I suppose my apartment would be perfect for them to start their married life, right? The uncomfortable silence that followed was the entire answer. Then Isabella's father took out a folder. We did the numbers. A good private residence would cost you around 45,000 pesos per month. If you sell your apartment, you would have enough to pay for it for many years, and there would still be something left to help Alejandro and Isabella with their initial expenses. There was the truth. It was not my health. It was not my safety. It was money. And if I refuse? I asked. Alejandro lowered his gaze. Mom, we hope it is not necessary to take other measures. But if you start making unreasonable decisions, maybe someone would have to review if you need support to manage your affairs. He did not finish saying it. He did not need to. They wanted to make me seem incapable of managing my life. That night after they left following my refusal, I cried for the first time in years. Not out of fear. I cried because I understood that the family I thought I had no longer existed. I called Alexander Grant, my financial and legal advisor, the only man I had trusted completely since the death of my husband Javier. Alexander, the first need you to prepare documents. It is possible I will soon have to reveal information I have kept secret for years. His voice grew serious. Mrs. Vargas, are you sure? Once this comes to light, there will be no turning back. I am sure. And now, in the parking lot of the hall with my cheeks still burning, I knew the moment had arrived. I took my phone from my warm black bag. I dialed Alexander's number. Alexander, it is Elena. I need you to come to the hall right now. Bring the documents you know about. It is time they knew the truth. Are you completely sure? I looked toward the entrance. From there I could see Isabella laughing with her friends. Alejandro stood beside her with a weak smile without any sign of remorse. 30 minutes, Alexander, no more. I hung up and walked toward my car. That night they would stop seeing me as an easy widow to push around. While I waited, I called Mr. Ramirez, my neighbor. He was 70 years old and had been like a brother since Javier died. He had a copy of my keys for emergencies. Mr. Ramirez, it is Elena. I need to ask you a favor. Can you go into my apartment and bring me the brown folder from the second drawer of my desk? It is urgent. He did not ask questions. He knew when something was serious. A week earlier he had warned me that Isabella had come to the building with a man who looked like an appraiser. When Mr. Ramirez arrived agitated about 20 minutes later with the folder inside a sealed envelope, he asked what had happened. I told him in a few words. His face hardened. In a few minutes Alexander would arrive. When he left, I opened the envelope. There were the copies of the documents my family had never seen. Bank statements, property titles, investment records. There was a strong account, properties, and an office building in the city that Javier had left operating for years. There was also the house in the coastal town we had bought as an investment. My husband had not been the ordinary employee many believed. He started with a small import business and with patience built a solid silent fortune. Javier used to say that visible wealth attracted problems and discreet wealth gave freedom. We both decided to live simply to protect our privacy. I never imagined I would have to protect myself from my own son. In the folder there was something more. During the last 3 years I had secretly paid many of Alejandro's expenses. The card payments he attributed to work bonuses came from my account. The rent discount he thought he had negotiated was my money. Part of the wedding support also depended on me. For 3 years, while Isabella humiliated me for being a burden, I was the reason they were still standing. The lights of a car illuminated the parking lot. It was Alexander. Mrs. Vargas, he said with a portfolio under his arm. I have everything you asked for. I had it prepared since that call, but I need to ask you one more time. Are you sure? I looked toward the hall. Yes. Alexander opened his folder. Here are the instructions to cancel the scheduled transfers in favor of Alejandro. Also the notification to inform the landlord that you will no longer cover debts nor serve as backup for future renewals. As they already have 3 months overdue, that will put them in a difficult situation. I signed as well. This is not revenge. I protected him too long from their consequences. I understand, Mrs. Vargas. We entered the hall together. The music lowered until it stopped. 130 pairs of eyes turned toward us. Some recognized Alexander in the city. His presence did not go unnoticed. Isabella was the first to react. What are you doing here again with her? She shouted from the dance floor. Alexander did not raise his voice. He approached Alejandro and Isabella, but the hall was so quiet everyone could hear. I need to speak with you. It is urgent. Alejandro approached pale. Mom, what is happening? Who is this gentleman? Alejandro, he is Alexander Grant, my financial and legal advisor. He comes to put in order some things you thought you could keep using without asking me. Alexander took out the first page. Mr. Alejandro Vargas, your mother has given instructions to suspend the monthly transfers that covered part of your personal expenses, rent, credit cards, vehicle insurance and other payments. The amount was 80,000 pesos monthly. The color drained from Alejandro's face. Alexander continued. The landlord will also be notified that Mrs. Vargas will not be responsible for new debts or renewals. Isabella let out a nervous laugh. That is impossible. Alejandro does not have a rich mother. Look at her. See how she dresses, the car she drives, the flower shop where she works. She lives off a pension. You did not know anything about me, Isabella, I said. You only saw what you wanted to see. Alexander took another document. Finally, Mrs. Vargas withdraws her authorization to cover the pending balance of this celebration and any additional unpaid charges. Hall, banquet, music, flowers, bar and photography amount to nearly 950,000 pesos. From now on, what remains is the responsibility of those who contracted it. No one spoke. Even the waiters stood still. Alejandro looked at me as if he had just seen me for the first time. It was you, he murmured. All this time it was you. During 3 years, Alejandro. 3 years in which I thought I was helping you get out of a bad moment. 3 years waiting for you to react. 3 years paying mistakes that were not mine. Isabella started pacing with her makeup already running. Alexander read without raising his voice. In 36 months, Mrs. Elena Vargas covered payments and transfers of approximately 2,880,000 pesos to sustain Alejandro Vargas's expenses and indirectly those of his now wife. A murmur ran through the hall. Besides, Mrs. Vargas had authorized covering part of the pending balance of this celebration. That authorization is withdrawn due to the events of tonight. Isabella began to cry, but it did not sound repentant, it sounded desperate. Alejandro took another step. Mom, please, there must be a way to fix this. The wedding, the guests, everything. Before letting them slap me, I said. Alexander looked at me. Do you want me to explain the detail? Yes, let it all be heard. Alexander continued. Hector gave another step. Mom, are you not destroying my life like this? Am I destroying your life? I asked. Was it me who brought your family to pressure me to sell my home? Was it me who allowed your wife to slap me in front of everyone? Was it me who tried to make me seem incapable to take my assets? Alexander took out another sheet. I must also inform you, Mr. Vargas, that your mother has initiated the process to modify her will. The assets that were previously destined for you will be redirected to a foundation dedicated to protecting older people from family and financial abuse. Isabella staggered. You cannot do that. Alejandro is your only son. We are your family. Family is not a word used to take a house from an older woman, I replied. Family is not looking at the floor while your mother is slapped. Family is not planning how to dispossess someone and then calling it concern. The manager of the hall approached with several papers in hand. He maintained a professional tone. Some guests started leaving discreetly. Alejandro approached me with tears in his eyes. Mom, please. I know it was wrong. I know we hurt you, but there are people here. There are photos, there are memories. Do not leave us in ridicule. It was not a fight, Alejandro. It was a betrayal. And I am not leaving you in ridicule. You did that when you chose greed over respect. Isabella looked at me with desperation. And what are we going to do now? You are going to work. You are going to live according to what you earn. You are going to pay what you owe, and you are going to learn not to put your hand in a house that is not yours. Then I heard a voice behind me. Aunt Elena, wait. It was Ines, my niece, Alejandro's cousin. She had been sitting at the back. She ran toward me with tears in her eyes. I did not know anything about this, I swear. Alejandro never told me what they were planning. Ines worked as a teacher and had stayed close to me even when Alejandro drifted away. I put a hand on her cheek. I know, Ines. You have never seen people as opportunities. Why did you never tell us about the money? Because Javier and I saw what money can do to a family. We decided to live simply so no one would want us for a bank account. Alexander approached. Mrs. Vargas, there is nothing more to do here. I hugged Ines. Remember how everyone behaved tonight? That says more than any last name. Then I looked at Alejandro and Isabella one last time. You have my number. When you are ready to talk about respect, responsibility, and a true apology, you can look for me. But first you are going to resolve this mess on your own. I left the hall with Alexander, leaving behind the murmur of the guests, Isabella's crying, and my son's face, who finally understood what he had lost. 3 days later, my apartment felt peaceful for the first time in a long time. The phone rang non-stop. Several days later, Ines, Elsa, and Mr. Ramirez arrived. 6 months later, I was sitting in a television studio waiting for a national interview. 2 years have passed since that night. Now I write these lines sitting on the same balcony. Thank you for listening to today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.